The story begins on Coruscant in the Jedi Council Chamber. Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, and young Anakin Skywalker were standing before the shaken Jedi Masters explaining the recent events. It was quite a bit to take in. Young Skywalker was extremely impressive. He single-handedly destroyed the Naboo blockade and brought a swift end to the conflict. The boy was merely 9 years old. It was nothing short of incredible. Qui-Gon also explained that the malicious dark Jedi he encountered on Tatooine emerged again. He explained that the warrior was extremely skilled. However, his arrogance was his undoing. The warrior, who Qui-Gon had no doubt was a Sith Lord, was struck down by his apprentice Obi-Wan. While Qui-Gon and the mysterious Sith were fighting near the reactor shaft, the ray shield-protected entrance snapped open. The Sith Lord was too occupied facing Qui-Gon to even notice, so Obi-Wan managed to slice the Dark Lord in half just before he struck Qui-Gon down. It left them both shaken, but they still managed to bring his body back to Coruscant for a thorough investigation. Nobody really knew what to say. The news of the recent events worried everyone, but they hurt Master Yoda the most. He felt that he failed. As the Grand Master of the Jedi Order, he should be able to feel the return of the Sith, but he was ignorant, and it was eating him inside. How could he possibly feel confident about leading the Order if he couldn't even see the emerging darkness in the galaxy? So after the meeting, Yoda asked Qui-Gon to join him on his night walk just outside the Jedi Temple. Qui-Gon didn't think much of it. Obviously, after the events that unfolded on Naboo, Yoda probably wanted to talk more in detail, especially about the mysterious warrior. So they walked, observing the Coruscant's many sky lanes, all the people of the Republic not knowing the threat that was unleashed upon the galaxy. It was most disturbing. So Yoda spoke, starting off the conversation with a rather unusual question. "How feel you?" Qui-Gon just smiled, appreciating the concern, although he just said, "I'm fine, Master." Much to unfold, there is, Qui-Gon. Great care we must take. I agree, Master. I'm sure that the sudden emergence of the Sith shocked us all beyond words. Yoda smiled. Yes. Trust me you do. Qui-Gon? Of course, Master. Task I have for you, my young Jedi. What is it, Master? Blind was I, unable to see the dark side. But you surprised us all, yes. Saw the dark side you did, like a true Jedi. Qui-Gon smiled upon hearing the kind words. Tell me, Qui-Gon, what change you would about the Order? Qui-Gon was taken aback with the question, but he would never waste an opportunity to discuss the recent flaws of the Jedi Order with the Grand Master. Qui-Gon explained that he would focus more on trusting the Force and letting it guide them all. He would focus on returning the Order to the original ideals the Jedi hold instead of wrapping themselves in political games. Yoda smiled again. So easy you always make it sound. Like your master, Dooku. This was currently a sensitive topic for Qui-Gon. After he arrived back to Coruscant, he was informed that Master Dooku had left the Order without even saying goodbye to him. Qui-Gon understood his reasons all too well, and perhaps Yoda was finally ready to listen after his old apprentice had left. Yoda then decided to stop wasting both of their time. He explained that there's a different reason why he wanted to talk to him, and it might sound quite crazy. Yoda told Qui-Gon that he will be the Grand Master now. He's stepping down, at least for now. Qui-Gon was obviously extremely shocked, so Yoda continued, telling him what they both already knew. Qui-Gon had a special connection in the Force, unlike any other Jedi. By following his instincts, he managed to unravel some parts of the Sith mystery none of them could possibly predict. So Yoda explained that he wants to see how well he will act as the Grand Master. They didn't have a new Grand Master in centuries. Yoda acted like this not so much because of his immense trust in Qui-Gon, but more because of the distrust in himself. He felt like he became blinded, unable to see the growing darkness in front of his eyes. Qui-Gon didn't quite know how to process this. He wasn't even on the Jedi Council, and now he's being made a Grand Master. He could obviously refuse, just like he did when offered a place on the Council before. However, this was different. Being a Grand Master was a whole different league. He could finally change the Order, fix everything wrong with the Jedi. He felt like he couldn't refuse, especially now when Dooku had left. He felt like he has to do this, if not for himself, for Dooku, for the galaxy. As the rumors in the Jedi Order that Yoda was stepping down emerged, the entire temple erupted into chaos. Padawans, knights, masters, they were all talking about the recent events, and this was just another thing to worry about. Windu was especially pissed off, but the next day, like nothing happened, Qui-Gon entered the Jedi Council chamber. Yoda's seat was replaced with a larger one. Qui-Gon sat down, and like nothing, they began discussing like usual. Qui-Gon got a lot of weird looks, but he wasn't amused. He immediately established his authority. It was something Qui-Gon wasn't good at. Sure, he was a respected Jedi, but this was all new to him. Still, nonetheless, he decided that he will change things because he genuinely believed that he could make the Order better. He got Yoda's permission at the end of the day. So days changed into weeks, and weeks changed into months as the Jedi Order got used to a new leader. Qui-Gon's approach was different. Political discussions often took abstract turns, moral dilemmas instead of simply pleasing the Senate. It was rather ineffective. The Chancellor and the Senate were confused, but Qui-Gon remained true to his ideals, determined to change things around. During these weeks, the Sith's body was also deeply analyzed. It was concluded that he was indeed a Zabrak originating from Dathomir. All of this just confused the Jedi even further. Typically, most of the Dathomirian Zabraks weren't allowed to leave the planet. Mother Talzin's control over the system was well known. He was approximately 20 years old, but it was hard to conclude his exact age. And that was because they found a high concentration of drugs in his system. The Zabrak must have taken them before the fight to increase his physical capabilities. Or it was the dark side doing its thing, increasing his power to unnatural levels. Both possibilities were terrifying. Although Qui-Gon was busy with his role of being the Grand Master of the Jedi Order, he always found time for training Anakin. Qui-Gon knew he would need to change his approach for training the boy. He was 9 years old, and although Qui-Gon didn't want to admit it before, it was true. The boy was dangerous. He'd need to take great care training him. But with Qui-Gon's experience also came profound understanding of other younglings and Padawans. He knew exactly how to help Anakin. He was more like a father figure than anything else. Exactly what Anakin needed. Obi-Wan was left more alone. Qui-Gon still found time to catch up with his student, but at the end of the day, Obi-Wan was 25 years old. He was ready. Obi-Wan was disciplined, patient, getting more and more powerful, and he also helped Anakin as much as he could. He was like an older brother to him. He tried to be less strict as he knew Qui-Gon was doing a good job at keeping him disciplined and just tried to cheer him up whenever he could. Anakin's training didn't include any lightsaber training at all yet. Qui-Gon knew that would be a mistake. Anakin needed time. That's all. He needed time to adjust, see what being a Jedi truly meant. His daily routine mostly consisted of meditation, but Qui-Gon made sure it wasn't too taxing or difficult. He knew meditation could be painful early on. He made sure there was also some excitement in Anakin's life. Little things like an occasional trip around Coruscant, or something as simple as being awake past his bedtime. It wasn't much at all, but it felt like a lot to Anakin. Qui-Gon didn't abandon Jedi ideals or rules by doing things like this, but at the same time, he got closer to Anakin. As Anakin was growing up, he got on with the standard lightsaber training. Many Padawans made fun of him. He was 13 years old and had never held a lightsaber before. He was a decade behind. It wasn't so funny to them anymore when Anakin surpassed them in every way with a lightsaber just after mere weeks of his training. He moved like a blur. His technique was still sloppy, but he made up for it with his natural affinity to the Force. His reflexes were sharp, his moves fast and decisive. He was a natural. Qui-Gon looked at him with pride as he outclassed every one of his friends and not friends. Some were happy for him, some despised him even more. And that was okay with Anakin, and also Qui-Gon. Anakin's life got only better from there on. The Confederacy was getting more powerful, and as Obi-Wan was zipping across the galaxy, trying to cool the situation down, Anakin and Qui-Gon stayed mostly on Coruscant. Qui-Gon still tried taking Anakin on exciting missions. Often they took off to remote worlds to solve local problems. It may not be technically worth the Grand Master's time, but it introduced a great way to teach Anakin some important life lessons. Still, Qui-Gon had a certain responsibility. As the Grand Master of the Jedi Order, he had to maintain a certain amount of authority and respect. It didn't sit well with Qui-Gon. He just loved helping people, no matter who, but he just had to leave those smaller missions he deeply enjoyed to other Jedi. That was no place for the Jedi Grand Master. So Qui-Gon relied on the excuse of training Anakin to get permission to leave Coruscant, clear his mind, and stretch his legs. Another thing Qui-Gon took great interest in through the years was the mysterious passing of Sifo Dyas. Sifo Dyas was a dear friend of Master Dooku. His death was troubling, especially with the Sith threat emerging, Qui-Gon couldn't simply dismiss it as an accident. He launched a thorough investigation on Felucia early on, and kept the dedication to find out the truth throughout the years. Being a Grand Master was a lot of work. He hoped Dooku would reach out to at least talk to him at some point, but he never did. Dooku was really fed up with the Jedi, which was understandable, but this just wasn't in Dooku's character. Being the Count of Sereno wasn't enough for Dooku. Qui-Gon knew that. He was too ambitious. He thought that he and Dooku ended on good terms. So he was surprised that Dooku didn't reach out when he became a Grand Master. That was a big deal. He wondered if he should reach out, but who knows what Dooku is doing nowadays. As Anakin continued with his training, passion soon changed into confidence, and confidence into clarity. He was a true Jedi. As a few more years went by, Dooku became publicly involved with the Confederacy of Independent Systems. That shocked the entire council, and also Yoda, who was not on the council anymore. Most of the council members simply assumed he was getting old. His body was no longer what it once was, and neither was the mind, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Yoda was meditating every day, clearing his mind. Often he left Coruscant and traveled to distant worlds where the dark side was nothing but a whispering shadow. Although the Jedi Council was less and less happy with Yoda's trips, as they started treating him like a poor old man, it didn't help that Yoda was the person who actually single-handedly decided that Qui-Gon would be the Grand Master, and his position was very much obviously getting very permanent. Yoda and Qui-Gon agreed on almost everything. Yoda's mind was clear, and Qui-Gon always followed the Force. Tensions were rising, and the inevitable confrontation with the Separatists was becoming all too obvious. Anakin turned 19 as it became obvious that Dooku completely submitted to violence. He was becoming a tyrant. As the leader of the droid army, he was taking an offensive approach to force the Republic to let the Separatists exit the Galactic Republic. It hurt Qui-Gon. Dooku was now a tyrant that would have to be dealt with. Soon after Anakin started having dreams about the death of his mother, it was becoming more and more intense. He sought help from Qui-Gon, and honestly, Qui-Gon didn't exactly know how to act. Maybe the dreams would pass. Maybe it was some kind of Anakin's trauma, but in reality, they both knew the truth. They were premonitions. There was great chance that Shmi was in great danger. Qui-Gon knew that this was a crucial test for Anakin. He himself liked Shmi a lot, but sadly, he never got an opportunity to free her. So it is what it is now. Jedi cannot look back to their past like that. It's just not the Jedi way. Qui-Gon just hoped that Anakin would not break under the pressure and let go. It didn't help that just a standard month later, Obi-Wan Kenobi was captured on Geonosis. He was assigned to protect Senator Amidala, and in the process, he discovered a conspiracy that led him to a remote planet of Kamino. There, he found a clone army created for the Galactic Republic, created by Sifo Dyas. Sadly, Obi-Wan also got captured on Geonosis. Qui-Gon immediately sprang into action. It was time to play offensive. Dooku went too far this time. So while Master Yoda decided to investigate the clone army on Kamino, hundreds of Jedi, including Anakin, boarded on their ships and took off towards Geonosis. As Obi-Wan was tied to a chain, waiting to be executed, Count Dooku and Viceroy Gunray were looking down on him with signature looks of superiority. But suddenly, a green saber ignited next to Dooku's neck. "If it isn't my old apprentice," Dooku said. "You went too far this time, Count." Dooku was amused by Qui-Gon's presence. It's been so long. But this was not a man Qui-Gon knew all those years ago. He wouldn't think twice before initiating a genocide on him and the Jedi Order if it meant advancing his plans. Suddenly, super battle droids appeared behind Qui-Gon. It was just enough of a distraction for Jango to throw flames in the air, and Qui-Gon had to retreat to the arena below. In the arena, the fight was already erupting. Mace Windu himself freed Obi-Wan of his chains. Anakin was near, protecting Obi-Wan. The fight from here on wouldn't go so much in the Jedi favor. Qui-Gon urged the Jedi on the ship to prepare, clear their minds. His master was no fool. Arrogance will be their undoing. And indeed, many Jedi fell as the droid army pushed them more and more toward the center. Thankfully, Yoda appeared with the clone army. Dooku evacuated and managed to escape the planet on his solar sailor before anybody could track him down. Unknowingly to the Jedi, everything was proceeding exactly as Lord Sidious has foreseen. Back in the temple, the Jedi Order was shaken. They lost many today, but Qui-Gon stood as a stable leader he knew he had to be. He didn't know what to focus on. Obi-Wan, Anakin, his council duties. It was a lot, but Qui-Gon did his best. He remained a confident leader in the council, but he always found time for Obi-Wan. What Dooku did to him, it was completely out of his character, and Qui-Gon decided it would not be led unpunished. Another person needed Qui-Gon's desperate help. Anakin was shaken. He stopped having visions of his mother dying, but when he thought about her, he just felt cold, like she was missing. Also, everything that happened to Obi-Wan and everything else in between. It was just a lot, and Qui-Gon knew that. He meditated with Anakin, helped him clear his mind, gave him advice. He was what Anakin needed. He felt like Qui-Gon truly knew him. He understood his struggles, but also urged for his actions to be rational, to listen to the Force, but not to always act on it, and it made sense. At the end of the day, Anakin wanted to be just like Qui-Gon. He trusted him. Qui-Gon wielded significant power, and Anakin respected him deeply for it. His connection to the Force was unlike any other Jedi. Everyone could always learn something from him. At the beginning of the Clone Wars, Qui-Gon was extremely cautious. He didn't fall into political games. The Council often disagreed, but he held them back as much as possible when it came to war. They didn't even know who paid for the clone army, and Qui-Gon just knew that all of this was a part of the Sith's plot. It didn't mean that he could just ignore current needs of the Republic, and Jedi did fight beside the clones, but Qui-Gon didn't go all the way out of his way to save every system. It was cruel, even to some Jedi Masters on the Council, who were the coldest among Jedi, but Qui-Gon's mind was clear. He was playing the game Sith wanted, but with calm patience. Anakin and Obi-Wan were both excited to help people of the Republic, and although Qui-Gon did not fight in many battles, he allowed Anakin to join Obi-Wan on many battles. The boy was just too passionate to stop him. As long as Obi-Wan was with him, everything would be all right, Qui-Gon thought. The Council continued with their war efforts, but Qui-Gon made it clear that this was the design of the Sith. He wasn't impatient or worried all the time. He simply tried his best to disturb the Sith with patience and thinking. A big thing Qui-Gon stayed invested in was Sifo Dyas's assassination. By now, Qui-Gon was completely convinced that Sifo Dyas was murdered. He continued digging into it, kept spending resources on uncovering the truth, although many masters did not agree with him. He even went as far as getting to Felucia himself. The plan was to simply observe, reach into the Force, and see what can be found. By this point, the scene was deeply investigated many times, but not by a Jedi Master. Palpatine contacted Lord Tyrannus. He informed him that Master Qui-Gon is currently traveling towards Felucia in hopes of uncovering the mystery of Sifo Dyas's passing. He could not be allowed to uncover any crucial information about it. Besides, this was a perfect moment to get rid of the Jedi Master, as he was going alone. So Dooku boarded on his ship and immediately took off towards Felucia. They both knew Qui-Gon was a threat. In fact, Sidious always considered Qui-Gon a threat. He was in many ways a true Jedi, and he didn't like him having a seat as a Grandmaster. His mind was clear, his affinity to the Force unique and pure, and all of that didn't help Palpatine in advancing his war efforts at all. It was time for Jin to die. So, while Qui-Gon was walking in the lush forest on Felucia, near the place of accident, with his eyes closed, he suddenly sensed something. It was impossible to sneak attack him. He was too attuned with the Force, so Dooku just jumped on him, confident he can overpower his apprentice. Their blades hummed, Dooku's bloody red and Qui-Gon's emerald green. Qui-Gon took a defensive approach. Dooku was usually more defensive, but not this time. He attacked, so he would have to advance as well. Qui-Gon was patient and calculated. Dooku was almost proud of his apprentice. He was nothing like 10 years ago. However, the age also started weighing on both warriors. Besides Qui-Gon's fine looks, he was barely 10 years younger than Dooku, and they both felt the old years already creeping in, although they both made up to it with their wisdom and the dark side, respectively. Still, it was obvious Dooku was having an upper hand in this battle. Qui-Gon suddenly pressed a button on his comlink. Dooku kept pushing Qui-Gon back until a LAAT roared through the air. Qui-Gon leapt back on it and the ship took off, the master and apprentice looking in each other's eyes with cold expressions as the ship was gaining speed. When the Council found out about this, most of them were in agreement. If the Senate would know about this attack, it would just lower their trust in the Republic's army. It had to stay a secret, but Yoda and Qui-Gon disagreed. Telling this to the Senate would be a step in the right direction. They must know. They cannot let the war effort blind the obvious involvement of the Sith on every level. So Qui-Gon did indeed go speak before the Senate. He explained the assassination attempt on him by Count Dooku at the scene of Sifo Dyas's death, which confirmed the Sith's involvement on every level. The Senate was skeptical. Dooku was a traitor and a murderer, yes, but perhaps the place of the attack was only a coincidence. But Qui-Gon had more evidence ready. He showed the newest data simulating the crash of Sifo Dyas's ship on Felucia. It proved, almost completely, that the ship would never have spiraled out of control in this pattern if it wasn't under attack. And although most senators couldn't care less about one mere Jedi, this was Sifo Dyas. He created the clone army. This was all very suspicious, and Palpatine could only watch with clenched teeth as the Senate's war effort diminished in minutes. From there on, the war continued, and Qui-Gon too was starting to lose his confidence. But this was the natural progression of this conflict. He knew the war was only going to get worse with the Sith's involvement, so Qui-Gon decided to do something drastic. He felt like he had nothing else to give to the Order. He had become a Grandmaster and reshaped the Order for the better in almost every way. But now, there was only one more thing he could really do to help the galaxy. A standard week later, Count Dooku was sitting by his table in his vast castle when a long-awaited prisoner stepped through the doors, hands cuffed, Magna Guard on each side. His lightsaber was gone. Dooku gestured to uncuff him as he stood and paced the room. "It is nice to see you again, my old apprentice. It is not so nice to see you, Master. You feel so cold in the Force, and yet hot, like the rage inside you. It is the dark side, my friend, my greatest ally, or your greatest enemy." The room fell silent again. Dooku got closer. "It is time for you to accept the truth, my apprentice. I chose my path. I know, Master. So why did you choose to get captured then, my friend?" "I felt like I had nothing else to give to the Order besides trying to reason with the tyrant. I did everything we talked about, Master. The Jedi Order is different than it once was." Dooku smiled as he sat down again. "It is too late now, my friend. The Separatists will prevail. The changes are a direct result of my iron fist." "No, Master? No. The Jedi have changed." Dooku considered it for a second. He again stood up and got closer to Qui-Gon. In the vents above, Anakin and Obi-Wan were looking down at Qui-Gon and Dooku as they spoke, both of them ready to act any second. Qui-Gon did not come alone. He brought his trusted apprentices, and although the security was tight, they managed to infiltrate the castle and mask themselves in the Force. As Qui-Gon proved to be enough of a distraction for Dooku and his guards, the Force was radiating from Qui-Gon, almost too much, as he tried to hide his apprentices from Dooku. Qui-Gon spoke again, calm and steady. "The Jedi really did change. I came here to discuss the Sith Master hiding in the Senate. I need to know, Master. This other Sith Lord, who are they?" Dooku smiled. "Did you really think it would be that easy, my friend? He's destroying democracy, reshaping the galaxy for his own selfish needs. He's nothing like you." Dooku smiled again, and for a second, Qui-Gon thought that maybe, just maybe, the dark side hadn't fully consumed his master. Perhaps Dooku was still in there. But then Dooku roared, "It's the Chancellor, and I'm just like him." He ignited his saber, piercing Qui-Gon's abdomen. Qui-Gon collapsed to the ground. From above, Obi-Wan screamed. Anakin and Obi-Wan both dropped from the vents, a blue and a green blade swinging through the air directly at Dooku. He blocked with elegant surgical moves. Obi-Wan and Anakin were locked in. They knew together they might be able to take him. They both knew this was foolish. They got what they came for. Before Dooku killed Qui-Gon, he mentioned the Chancellor. That had to mean something. They could just leave, but it was too late now. They would have to win this fight. For Qui-Gon, Dooku kept retreating. Obi-Wan's and Anakin's minds were clear despite the burning rage. This shouldn't be personal, but it just became. Obi-Wan, for once, advanced Anakin's strikes, complementing his attacks. Anakin urged him to use Soresu as it was intended. "I'll do the attacks." They moved together. They didn't fight together too often, but it was enough so they could move together elegantly. Dooku sprayed lightning and they both blocked, and advanced again. They were relentless and cold, and Dooku was starting to regret what he had brought upon himself. The fight shifted from quick blows into a battle of endurance, something that even Makashi could not turn to Dooku's favor at his age. They all started to realize it slowly but surely. Dooku was losing. Qui-Gon's apprentices were just too good. They moved again. Dooku was preserving his strength until he saw an opening in Obi-Wan's defense. He managed to scorch Obi-Wan's back, but it wasn't enough to stop him. They both advanced again. Anakin and Dooku clashed. Anakin pressed on, burning Dooku's eye as Obi-Wan cut off his right arm. His saber extinguished as Anakin was able to finally slide his own saber toward ending the Dark Lord. They both fell to their knees, tears of sadness and joy dripping down their faces as they turned toward their master. And then, silence. Qui-Gon's body was gone. They both looked at each other in amazement. Unknowingly to anyone, Qui-Gon had also managed to complete his training to become a Force ghost, besides his many other duties. And now on Coruscant, in the 500 Republica, Palpatine was standing in a corner, his blade humming, his expression like that of a trapped rancor. In the middle of the room, Qui-Gon's Force ghost was glowing softly, an amused look on his face. Sidious whispered, "That's impossible." Qui-Gon answered, "It isn't impossible, Chancellor. I am now your greatest nightmare." Suddenly, Sidious spun through the air and sliced with his blade, right through Qui-Gon's Force ghost. Qui-Gon turned in amazement, entertained by Palpatine's terrified expressions. "You cannot hurt me. I suggest you run." Without hesitation, Palpatine started running from his apartment, as Qui-Gon gently jogged behind him. He almost couldn't contain his laughter. The Dark Lord seemed to be very scared of ghosts. To be fair, he did not know he could not hurt him either. Palpatine immediately took off on his shuttle, away from Coruscant, as Qui-Gon looked at the sky, a smile on his face. "Can't wait to tell Master Yoda about this."